like to point out to students the rhetorical skill of Frederick Douglass, especially in this speech where he shows how he is able to both claim that he is not going to try to argue his case, but then he does. When he says that sometimes his allies tell him that he should denounce less, argue more, try and make a logical case for the humanity of slaves instead of just rebuking them. And then he says, there's nothing here to be argued. What point in the anti-slavery creed would you have me argue? What branch of the subject do the people in this country need light? So he says, of course slaves are human. The slave is a man. And to even ask me to try and argue that point is insulting and offensive. But then he actually does go on to argue the case, to make his point in a logical way, so that he is able to both demonstrate his fury, his righteous rage, but also to give listeners an arsenal of arguments that they can use to argue against slavery in their own abolitionist fight.
This is from The Meaning of July 4th for the Negro, from Frederick Douglass. At a time like this, scorching irony, not convincing argument is needed. Oh, had I the ability and could reach the nation's ear, I would today pour out a fiery stream of biting ridicule, blasting reproach, withering sarcasm, and stern rebuke. For it is not light that is needed, but fire. It is not the gentle shower, but thunder. I think this is a really powerful, one of the most powerful lines in any speech that I've ever heard. I think that call for irony instead of logic is incredibly important. We're talking about a time, and Douglass himself is very much rooted in Enlightenment thinking, so logic, science are so important. But what he's saying here, there becomes a time when the obvious is so clear and everyone's denying the obvious, in this case, that he was a man, that African Americans were human beings, and calling people on that and saying that when something is so clear and all the evidence points to something being the case, making a logical argument doesn't make any sense anymore, and that really what you need is to throw it back in someone's face.
He makes his way to New York and writes the following. I've been frequently asked how I felt when I found myself in a free state. I've never been able to answer the question with any satisfaction to myself. It was a moment of the highest excitement I've ever experienced. I suppose I felt as one may imagine an unarmed mariner to feel when he is rescued by a friendly man of war from the pursuit of a pirate. In writing to a dear friend immediately after my arrival in New York, I said I felt like one who had escaped from a den of hungry lions. This state of mind, however, very soon subsided, and I was again seized with a feeling of great insecurity and loneliness. I was yet liable to be taken back and subjected to all the tortures of slavery. This in itself was enough to damp the ardor of my enthusiasm, but the loneliness overcame me. And I think in Douglass's narrative, with as many affecting moments as there is that moment that he has achieved or escaped slavery. I won't say he's achieved freedom, but he has made his way to a free state. He still would be subject to return under the fugitive slave law, but he has made it that far, and suddenly he realizes he is alone. He's been bereft of everyone he knows, of course, all of his relatives, and people he cared about he is left behind, and there he is, literally a stranger in a strange land, who has to attempt to make a life for himself.